Council Plan Committee meeting. It's Thursday, March 7th, 2019, 6 p.m. And I will ask Carmela to lead us in the pledge.
Thank you, Council Member. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Roll call of the members that are present. Call to order. Council Member Cummings. Here. Council President Mantella.
Here.
Council Member Kennedy is here. And not on the committee, but also present is Council Member Gully. And
he is on the committee, isn't he?
Not yet.
Oh, not yet. Okay.
And Council Member December. Council Member Parator is absent. And not on the committee. Our first item on the agenda is an overview of the city's zoning ordinance update project. We'll ask Commissioner Steve Streichman to come up, and as Director of Planning and Zoning.
Thank you.
All right, Commissioner.
Chair?
Councilmember Cummings.
Can we just have unanimous consent to put the legislation itself on this agenda? Yeah, we might as well put it on this agenda, and then I can take over as sponsor here.
Oh, okay.
Great.
What number is that? Can you give me a number?
Don't know offhand.
All right, so we're just gonna go over the project
We
first.
can start by going over the project.
Great.
Okay, and I'm going to introduce Mark Irwin from River Street Planning, who's going to take you through exactly the process for the rezone. Margaret?
Hi, everybody. Thank you. I'm Margaret Irwin. I'm the principal and owner of River Street Planning and Development. We're a 22-year-old planning firm. For 15 years, our business operated in downtown Troy. I'm now a few feet over the line in the town of Brunswick. We're a 4-person staff. We're a small business, a woman business enterprise, and we are, I think, well recognized for our work in planning, zoning, and community engagement. We were delighted to have the opportunity to submit a proposal for the Troy zoning ordinance update. We actually began this process in 2003 when we got through the diagnostic phase of an update for the city then. So that created a great basis for us to build upon. Everyone on our team has considered Troy their city for generations, some decades. We put together a team that we're very proud of. We think that they cover all of the important bases, from engineering and market analysis to community design and legal services, and includes a number of firms that I can talk about in more detail if you'd like. But I wanted to really focus on the approach. The technical process, it's also a pretty standard approach. There is an established way to do it, and that's what the city's proposal to the Department of State and what the RFP covered. So a couple of comments about it. We divided our proposal into 5 components: coordination, comprehensive diagnosis and scans, community engagement, code preparation, and adoption. The first point about coordination is that it's all about understanding absolute details in the most specific context at the neighborhood level. That means lots of conversations with lots of people. Quite literally, in the end, every word of every sentence in the new code will be reviewed by us, by staff, by project advisory committee, and by anyone else that the city identifies as a key stakeholder. That takes a lot of time, it takes a lot of meetings, and it takes a lot of patience. And so we have made sure that there's adequate coverage for that to happen, because it's going to need to happen. The second component is a comprehensive scan and diagnosis. The first thing we need to do is understand how things are working today. And the zoning must be consistent with your newly adopted comprehensive plan. So that relationship, because both have the power of law and they need to reinforce each other. So the fact that you have a new current comprehensive plan is a great basis to build upon. So we start by reviewing your current zoning, including all of the processes and procedures, the variances, how the decisions are being made, what kinds of things are coming before the city, and understanding exactly how the zoning is composed. And typically that will give us on a zoning ordinance, the age of the cities, issues with regard to definitions, with regard to modern components, with regard to a variety of tools that have not been used necessarily in the city, but may be promised. So the first piece is to understand what's in place now. The second piece is to understand all of the other plans and studies that influence the city's vision for the future and its neighborhoods and its land use strategy. That includes your comp plan, the local waterfront plan, a whole variety of other studies, both site-specific and general, that set the framework. And then the third thing that we want to do, which is a little unusual, is to have an absolute expert in retail and commercial corridors, the resortees, look at areas of the city that you define. So typically it would be commercial hubs, so Lansingburg, downtown, stretches of Hoosick Street, to really help us to understand one very important thing. Too often communities will try to use zoning to influence the market in a neighborhood. It's got an important role in doing that, but sometimes there are other tools that are more effective. So we want to make sure we understand the best possible strategy to anchor those commercial areas in the future, since they drive tax base and they also influence quality of life for the neighborhood significantly. So that's a sort of additional approach, a unique element that we offer, and I think is really important in today's case. It also gives us a fresh set of eyes on downtown, and hopefully that will help continue the momentum that's been occurring there. The community engagement includes a website development, outreach and media development, good track record doing that, a great track record of getting people involved, 4 major public events, a final public presentation, and whatever amount of focus groups and interviews are necessary at the neighborhood level and with particular stakeholders as we need to understand. And this is part, I think, of ongoing community engagement efforts that the city is engaged in. We'll coordinate those and other plans and studies that are going on. The bottom line is that this is about writing new code. So the code preparation is really the big task in terms of where the dollar values are. And as I said, this is word by word, review by review, law by law, section by section. And so we write section by section, they're reviewed, they build on each other, there's a logical order to do that. We typically have 1, 2, maybe even 3 drafts of a code before we have a final code that's brought to the public, that's brought to the council, and that is hopefully put forward for adoption. In between, there's plenty of opportunities to update the council, to update the city's boards, and to engage in any other way. We just sort of left that as appropriate as you needed us to do it. But the communication flow internally is really important in being able to move zoning forward and getting it adopted, which is in the best interest of everybody. Then the final component, of the code development, we stress a really user-friendly strategy. I used to say my mom should be able to pick up the zoning ordinance and understand what it meant. Everyone should, whether you're a property owner, whether you are a resident, a business, or a developer. It should be clear, and you should know that it's going to be enforced straightforwardly, timely, efficiently, equitably, and consistently. And so those are some of the tests that we have. And so we use illustrations and graphics and tables and ways of summarizing data and reducing the number of districts so that zoning is understandable and approachable. We think there's a great opportunity to do that in Troy. And then the final step is adoption. And that's a pretty technical, review, public hearings, seeker consultations with the county, statutory review. In this case, it'll also involve a review by the Department of State, since they're the funder of the project. And we would like to add what we call a board summit at that point, where we would meet, it's usually a day-long session with planning, zoning, and any other historic preservation or any other people, including yourselves, who have a role in making decisions about land use in the city. So, and really to orient and train to the new zoning and any new tools that are available. So I'll stop there and answer any questions that you have. But we were delighted to submit a proposal, and we're very hopeful to be able to provide you the services to get it done in a year.
Sure.
Council member comments?
You spoke a little bit about doing some of that design work and creating material that will help people. My sense is that's to help people understand the code. And if someone's gonna come to a project before the, in are those like guides that will be available in the planning and zoning and code departments for folks who are, they want to build a new building?
So
It sort of
yes,
simplifies
yes.
code and makes it so they don't have to read all of code, but it's a guide that says this is the parts that you need to pay attention to if you're doing this part. Is that sort of what you're talking about? Or?
Yes, and so we use illustrations, guidelines, standards, depending upon how much of a regulation you want it to be. Some can be voluntary, some can be suggestions, other can be requirements. And they are, intensively graphic. And those exist in all kinds of zoning today. But in the city's case, there's also the opportunity to ask questions about whether things like form-based zoning, which concerns itself more with the outside use, although we still think inside use matters a lot to people, but begins to think about sort of the way a building or buildings will impact a neighborhood from a form perspective. Once you start down that road, it's very important that each element of a form-based neighborhood or an overlay be heavily illustrated. So it's very clear to potential investors what kinds of expectations is the city putting out there. So the more form-based the zoning is for certain districts, the more heavily illustrated that district's definitions and section might be. But overall, yes, and the ability to both parse the zoning so that you understand how to use it based on what you're trying to do is important, and also get more of it online and streamline processes so that it's just easier, less work for someone with a good idea and less work for the development board that's reviewing proposals. And hopefully a speedy review of the projects that you do support and the kinds of development and forms that you support.
Good. Just to add to what you mentioned, the form-based codes, like how you decide based on which districts or what kind of input and what level of form-based codes will apply.
So the diagnostic scan is really the driver behind how to structure zoning. We assume that your code will be what we call a hybrid code. It'll have some traditional elements and potentially some form-based elements. How they're structured, whether that underlying district is all form-based or they can be used as an overlay that gets applied based upon projects or investments, that's something that we'll look at. The form-based approach works best in neighborhoods where there's opportunities for infill and new construction. It's not usually appropriate in places like the East Side, which are built out, or other residential neighborhoods where you're not going to see major new investment of a scale that would change the form of the neighborhood. So those will be some of the criteria that we look at. But I can't say right now where it would be appropriate. And then there are other incentive tools like performance-based zoning, which expects, or affordable housing, supported zoning. And we've experienced with all of those. And if the market supports it, those may be recommendations as well. I guess the bottom line is there are a lot of modern tools, some of which have not been used by Troy yet and may be appropriate. But those are decisions that we've made together with you and the city.
Great. And just on that quick comprehensive scan, at what level it would go back and review like past like zoning variances that were.
Typically, we look at 10 years, and and they'll be across the board. We'll understand the variances. We'll also do a detailed analysis of how your zoning corresponds with how land is actually being used, because sometimes we'll see that get out of whack over time. And is it allowing the kind of pattern of development that you want? For some time in Troy, you couldn't build to the front lot line. You had to set a building back, which is not really consistent with today's best practices in planning. But it was appropriate when the initial code was written. So a lot of it is just kind of bringing things up to date.
So we'll receive the full diagnostics and all the.
Yeah. Okay. Across every neighborhood, as well as citywide issues and policy issues, and then integrating both the neighborhood scans, but we also have on our team Schumacher Engineering, and actually James and Rick Boyd, the company was just bought, who are climate change adaptation specialists. It's a great concern to me that a lot of Troy lies in a floodplain, and particularly that a lot of its redevelopable or infill land lies in the floodplain. I mean, climate change adaptation is a really important part of zoning, and and something that we want to be able to bring the best experts to bear on looking at the data and helping to frame suggestions for waterfront and waterfront adjacent uses.
Any other questions?
Chair,
Councilmember Bessemer?
thank you for coming to speak to us. Do you have any examples of other municipalities you've worked with in the past?
Absolutely. We've written codes for the city of Schenectady, ordinances and guidelines for Albany. We've written code for the city of Rome, the city of Oneida, and for dozens of smaller communities, villages, and towns. But if you take our team together, we are the authors of over 80 zoning ordinances and related major codes. So this team has an enormous experience across the board: market-based zoning, age-friendly zoning, form-based zoning, performance zoning, as well as traditional zoning. And that's the exciting piece of the puzzle, is that we have brought together a group of people who I think will work really well together and work really well with the city and enable the city to consider any tool that you might want to.
Thank you.
Councilman Cummings?
So I'm trying to understand some procedural questions here. But my sense is that because sponsorship has been withdrawn, or will be withdrawn from this, it'd be good for the committee itself to sponsor it. So I'm asking for unanimous consent to add Resolution 15 to the agenda now. Typically, agenda items like this should be co-sponsored by the committee for the issue at hand anyway. So I will move for unanimous consent to just add Resolution 15 to the agenda of the Planning Committee for our consideration as sponsors.
Yeah, I'll second that. And do we have a vote?
Well,
All in favor?
all in favor of adding it to the agenda.
All in favor of adding Resolution 15
Resolution 15.
to the Planning Committee agenda?
Aye.
Aye. All in favor?
And then
Or all against?
I'll just ask the clerk to add us as co-sponsors
And
to this resolution. It's already passed finance for the record. And it's on the agenda for a regular meeting tonight. But yeah, I would like to see this committee be added as sponsor since it's like a project.
yeah, it's a resolution authorizing the deputy mayor to execute a contract with River Street Planning to develop a new zoning ordinance. And yeah, I'll just call for the clerk to add it to the agenda. Thank you.
All in favor?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed?
Great.
Further discussion?
Further, I know Council President had some concerns about the finances of this. Do you want to discuss that now or at the regular?
We'll discuss that at the regular.
Okay. Great. Then,
Thank you all
Thanks.
very much.
Great, thanks, Margaret.
Thank you.
Steve? Sure. Do you have any other comments? Do you have a timeline laid out? Yeah.
We actually have not yet. We met this afternoon to talk about things that we want to consider and look at, who will be involved from the city. We have started pulling together information to give to River Street as far as layers of the GIS, the zoning, the tax parcels, the analysis of 10 years of zoning variances. So that was already information that's starting to be pulled together to send. We anticipate this to take 1 year. Like, we get started on it right away. We continue to have issues, obviously, with the zoning ordinance as it exists right now. And as Margaret said, they worked on the zoning ordinance for me in Schenectady. It was a great process, on time. It did great things, what we needed it to do. It was creative, that required some certain waterfront parcels to include riverfront access. There were a lot of great things that came out of that. And there's great tools out there that we really look forward to having in Troy as well. And I'm not sure what the questions are on financing. I guess I'll be here to answer that at planning or at the council meeting. Great. Thank you for your support.
Thanks, Steve.
Thanks, Steve.
Great, so I think we'll move on to the other resolution on the agenda. So yeah, there's another resolution on the agenda. Resolution 17 is resolution in support of the City of Troy's application for a grant to address zombie and vacant
That's fine.
properties.
That's finance.
This is on the planning committee agenda.
To discuss.
Resolution 17. Do I have a motion?
Motion.
Alright, second, and all in favor? Aye. Do you want to discuss,
So we
the zombie grant?
Sure, we've been invited to apply again for zombie grant funding. Another $250,000 is what we are anticipating to apply for, and we're looking for a resolution in support from the city council. We've had a lot of great success already with the current zombie legislation. It allowed us to hire an additional code enforcement officer. The code enforcement officers also got software and handhelds to make them more efficient out in the field. And while it took us a little time to get up to speed, we hired a counsel, and we are enforcing zombie properties delinquent. We're getting the mortgage companies actually we're holding them responsible, and this has resulted in our first settlement actually of $14,000 for one property, and we're working with the same company on another property that they haven't anticipated having the same amount again. So it's providing results already. Again, the DFS, Department of Financial Services website, is not always the easiest thing to work with. As long trying to consolidate all the information into one place, but as soon as it gets there, things change again. So I think we've gotten the process down. We know what the notifications are, and we anticipate stepping up the enforcement. The new application will allow us to hire an additional code officer as well, pay for legal counsel moving out in the future, and we will be purchasing building blocks software, which will help with enforcement as well. And it helps visualize where the problems are, get the information right away, and let the community participate as well to see where the problems are and what can be done.
Awesome.
Chair.
Councilman Golly?
Steve, you mentioned the one house that we settled and got 14,000. Are there other properties? Are there other properties that have come
So we have
to fruition through the zombie grant,
right.
through the first grant that we had?
Yes, well, like I said, we that is the first one, so we don't have the funding yet. They just agreed to the settlement.
Yeah.
That's on Lark Street, and there's another one that we are working with the same company, and we anticipate a second settlement from them. And then we have we did those more or less as a test to see how this went, like to make sure all the procedures were in place, we had all the forms properly done. And I think what we're looking at is we'll probably go through a different state courts instead of local courts moving forward. But we're going after the finance mortgage holders that hold most of the properties, because we're trying to be able to get them to the table to talk about 3 or 4 or 5 properties. And it's not just how do you get it into compliance, but it's also what's your plan for the property? When are you going to take title to this? How are you going to sell it? So we're trying to push that too as well.
Good to hear.
Steve, or Council Member, or Council President, Carmella, Antilla?
Steve, nice job. As you stated, we were successful in a prior grant, very, very helpful, worthwhile. What's our match on this? Is this an 80-20 or no match?
There is no match on this.
Okay, good.
Yeah, straight cash. We get the drawdowns in advance of spending funding as well.
Okay, and do we apply for a specific dollar, or is there a max?
Or I think our max is 250. That's what we're
Okay.
applying for.
Okay. Awesome.
Chair.
Councilmember December?
Thanks, Steve. I'll just echo the comments. This is something very exciting that you guys are working on. These zombie property issues are really important. I would ask, so what's the distinction between we're going through city courts versus state courts? Is that related to the scope of how many can go at a time?
I think it's related to the experience we've had there, the delays, and the amount of fines we can go after.
Okay. we'll keep up the good work. Thanks.
Can I have a really good comment? I'm sorry. It's just a really good story.
Please.
So there is a property up in North
Max, that's
Central.
there.
Sorry, there was a property up in North Central that it was a zombie property. And Eric Ferraro, who is our vacant building code officer, he actually worked with the bank because they couldn't locate the current owner to be able to execute a quitclaim deed. And he found the current owner and was able to get him to execute a deed so they could fast forward the foreclosure process. And then that building was actually turned over. So in addition to going to court and working with the attorneys, there's also this community outreach piece part of it to be able to find some of these owners to make that foreclosure process go a lot faster. So that's a really key component of that. And including in this next round of ask is also an additional code officer, so that we actually have somebody in the field, because what we found is that the amount of paperwork and administrative nature of this particular grant, you have to have somebody in the office and somebody also out in the field who's still going out and doing those things. So this grant request will include another officer as well.
Mr. Chair?
Council President?
Yeah, that's very, very helpful, Monica. And, regarding the code officer, will that code officer only work on that due to the funding, or will that code officer be able to work on other issues?
Well, this next round of funding, they actually opened it up and broadened it up a little bit so that it's vacant, it's blighted, it's those kinds of things. It's not necessarily just zombie properties.
Mhm.
So they were able to open it up a little bit. So that's still a really wide field for us. We have at least I think around 500 or 600 properties still. So it's still an active role. And so that you always have somebody who's working on the paperwork and administrative side of it, and somebody still out in the field being able to take inventory and go through and inspect and be able to kind of keep those things going as well too. So
Okay.
it's a great opportunity to be able to add an extra officer to a team that needs it, but also be able to double down and be able to get the administrative level that you need to get into the court system.
And did I read something that the 2-year window is coming down potentially to 1 year in terms of the state mandating the banks to go after these folks? I had heard maybe,
Council President.
yeah,
Or
Yeah, you're
Chair.
talking about for
excuse
the
me.
foreclosure process itself.
yes.
There is there's a lot of blurriness around some of that, and I know that's something that NICOM has been working on
Okay.
consistently with real property tax law. I know that was part of it too, real property, law or whatever it is, but yeah, so they've been looking at some of those. I think it's Article 19.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
does, they're working on it. That's
Yeah,
not
Article
law
19
yet,
or
but.
18.
Yeah.
So I know that there's different timeframes. Sometimes they're 18 months, sometimes, but the process by the time you get into courts and all that other kind of stuff makes it longer.
Okay.
Great, and when we're targeting the negligent landlords or property owners, is there a way, do we evaluate the negative impact that they've caused in the neighborhood? Is there any way to evaluate that? Is that part of the legal proceeding?
That's not, I mean, we're
I was
we're not
curious.
really evaluating that. We are looking for where we can make the biggest bang for the buck with the most properties.
Okay,
So, no. I mean,
Alright.
any bad property has a negative impact on the
Yeah.
surrounding neighborhood, surrounding the adjoining houses or adjacent houses.
okay, thanks. Any other comments, council? Okay. Concerns? Deputy Mayor,
Yep.
One more. story?
It's kind of, no, not a story.
Huh?
This is actually an update, and it's probably more suited for general services, but I thought I'd take the opportunity for planning because it is about planning. I just want to give you an update. I met with the president of the Knickerbocker Association today. And I know that that's been kind of one of the concepts that we're talking about with the Lansingburg pool and with a lot of the stuff that's going on up there. So I did request, it's the association's thought process at this point in time to enter into a new lease agreement with the city. We're not quite sure what those proposed terms are gonna be. There are gonna be a change in terms. So we've asked them for a draft document to send to us so that we can take it into consideration and see what those terms are for them. So I just wanted to update you with that and let you know that that is moving forward and that we're hopefully gonna come to a resolution here soon on the whole process, so. Okay?
Good.
Thank you.
Chair,
Deputy, thank you, Deputy Mayor. Councilmember Gully?
I appreciate hearing that news, and I just hope that if that doesn't come to fruition soon, we have a plan B in place.
Noted. Do I have a motion to, we did vote. Alright, all in favor of resolution 17? Aye. All opposed?
Okay, thank you.
Great. And is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion.
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Closed. Alright, thank you everybody for coming to the planning committee meeting. That
Yeah.
is the end.
I have to open up finance. Can we do it right
Yeah,
after
yeah,
finance?
go right
ahead.
So it will
Go
take 2 seconds.
Yeah.
Okay.